Good morning, everyone, and kia ora tatou in New Zealand. Her Excellency Wendy Hinton, the Ambassador of New Zealand to Turkey, Mr. Charles Finney, Trade Consultant, Lead Negotiator for New Zealand, China, and New Zealand, Taiwan FTAs, Ms. Catherine Beard, Executive Director of Business NZ, distinguished members of the Turkish New Zealand Business Council, guests and press members. Welcome to DEİK's webinar on Back to Business. With COVID-19 crisis, the world has been going through from unprecedented times, and with its long-lasting impact on global economy and international relations, it can change the world forever. Governments adapt to the changing global trade and supply chain vulnerabilities, including assessing potential new markets. On the digital side, webinars and conference calls have become our new normal. DEİK has been doing a great job with many webinars and video calls so far. We have successfully conducted many meetings on internet. As the chairman of Turkish New Zealand Business Council, we have witnessed how New Zealand fought on coronavirus, and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has once again shown great leadership. As a Prime Minister, she has shown a great example to the world. We admired her once again. Turkey also has been a great example during its fight against coronavirus. Despite Turkey being an international hub, it has shown great resilience with its health infrastructure and health professionals. Thanks to our Health Minister, Mr. Fahrettin Koca, for his great efforts. Number of experts views 21st century as an Asian century. Hence, Turkey has launched Asia a New initiative last year to enhance its ties with Asia Pacific region and to diversify its trade and investment partners. New Zealand, as the best country in the world to do business with its well-educated workforce, high GDP per capita, and large investments in research and development, is a very important country in this region. Turkey and New Zealand, despite being two countries with a mutual friendship based on historical experiences, our current trade and investment relations are below our potential. Thus, with this webinar, we aim to boost their trade and investment relations by creating awareness on New Zealand among Turkey business community. Today, it is with great pleasure that DEİK Turkey New Zealand Business Council is welcoming leading expert speakers. Her Excellency Wendy Hinton, Ambassador of New Zealand to Turkey, she has always been supporting our council's activities since the first day of her office. Mr. Charles Finney, more than a trade consultant, he is an architect behind New Zealand, China, and New Zealand, Taiwan free trade agreements. Ms. Catherine Beard, Executive Director at Business NZ, she is also leading Export NZ and Manufacturing NZ. She works with government and other key decision makers on issues of concern to exporters and manufacturers, and also represents Business NZ at the Global Federation of Competitiveness Council. In our webinar, we are going to listen to them on a number of topics, such as what opportunities New Zealand is offering different sectors, countries' scope of trade and investment relations within the Asia Pacific region and in the world, and insights from their example fight against COVID-19. Also on how Turkey and NZ can strengthen the cooperation in a number of sectors that has important potential, such as agriculture, renewable energy, health, or construction. I am now leaving the virtual floor to Her Excellency Wendy Hinton. First of all, Ms. Ambassador, welcome again. How did New Zealand successfully contain the coronavirus outbreak? Could you give us more insights, and what will be the implications of coronavirus to the New Zealand economy in the long term? Ms. Hinton, your You are unmute right now. Can you unmute?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Well, I was going to give you a little bit of background. Thank you, M&A for the introduction and for organising for you and to you and DEİK and the DEİK team for organising this webinar. We're very fortunate to have you as the chair of our Turkey New Zealand Business Council and the team in DEİK working hard on our behalf. I just wanted to provide a bit of background before we get into the COVID scenario, because I can talk a little bit about that, but our expert panel here can talk with a great deal more knowledge from being in situ in Wellington and knowing the business community well than I can. So I wanted to just start by saying we have always had or long had a very strong interest in expanding trade and investment links with Turkey for many years. We've done a lot of work on it, but we've been hampered by a number of factors, including the fact that Turkey has quite high tariff and other barriers to some of our largest exports. And as you mentioned, one of those is agricultural products. In other areas, Turkey is part of a customs union with the EU, and Turkey is also looking to conclude FTA negotiations with the United Kingdom. That's ongoing at the moment. And trade settings are changing quite rapidly for New Zealand as well. We're in negotiations at the moment with the EU on an FTA. We hope to conclude those negotiations within a few months. New Zealand and the UK also recently agreed to start negotiations on a free trade agreement, and the first round of negotiations, I think, has already taken place. So we hope that these developments will stimulate interest in Turkey by our exporters of manufactured goods and our services exporters, and that Turkish producers will see new opportunities arise in New Zealand. We think that if the government of Turkey were interested in a deeper trade relationship with New Zealand, we would be up for that discussion. We undertook exploratory discussions a few years ago with Turkey on a free trade arrangement, and Charles Finney was a member of that negotiating team. These went very well until we hit problems with agricultural goods. So I think we should see if we can do better now. The world's a different place, and both countries stand to benefit from a mutually open trading environment. It's a win-win situation. Unfortunately, some governments have used COVID as an excuse for more protectionism rather than encouraging the freer flow of goods and services. And at the end of the day, New Zealand sees that those economies will not benefit from this approach. You might know that New Zealand is a founder member of the GATT, a member of the WTO and of APEC, the Asia Pacific grouping, as well as party to two very large regional plurilateral free trade arrangements, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Regional Comprehensive Partnership. We have free trade agreements with Australia, all of ASEAN, with China, Hong Kong, Taiwan and Korea. We have concluded recently a digital economy partnership with Chile and Singapore. And with Singapore, we have launched a new trade initiative to ensure supply chain connectivity and the removal of blockages to trade in a list of essential products, which includes medicines, medical and surgical equipment. So that's just a little tip of the iceberg. It shows you that a strongly based economic relationship with New Zealand can provide a way of accessing the much larger markets of the region. And Turkey and New Zealand have an intersection of interest there with FTAs with Malaysia, Korea, Singapore and Thailand. So, you know, we're already sort of meeting in the middle there somewhere. For China, New Zealand was the first OECD country to negotiate an FTA, and that is a country that is very high on Turkey's priority list. Today's session provides an opportunity to look at New Zealand's trading interests, our current trade negotiations, and also opportunities to deepen the relationship. And Catherine and Charles will give us a bit more in-depth, a few more in-depth insights into those settings. Finally, you know, New Zealand and Turkey are old friends. We were once fighting on opposite sides on the Gallipoli Peninsula and elsewhere, but that situation changed rapidly and we became firm friends. It's a friendship which has endured for more than 100 years, and it demonstrates just how quickly things can change given the will to do so. Turkey's unwavering support for the Gallipoli commemorative events and for all those who come to visit the battle sites and memorials is hugely appreciated by all New Zealanders. Together we have shown that we can form alliances based on concepts that can and should be universal, and those are core values and an innate sense of connection to each other. It's a huge asset, this friendship, and one that in the 21st century we think we could use as a basis for building a more creative dynamism around the modern relationship. As a small embassy, with the help of the Business Council, we're doing our best to move the economic relationship forward. It's been slow, and we would like to make more meaningful and quicker progress now. We have a low level of trade with Turkey. New Zealand has had an open market for many years, while Turkey has tariff and other barriers which do act as a disincentive to New Zealand exporters who've expanded their markets elsewhere, as I've just described, through a network of free trade agreements. I want to just have one little anecdote to show you how creative we can be. In New Zealand and Turkey already have some very interesting trade connections. Did you know that the intestines used in the Turkish national delicacy kokoreç come all the way from New Zealand, and Turkish bathrobes from Bursa are very popular indeed in New Zealand homes. These are just two little things. There are much bigger things that we should aim for, and we should look at more creative ways of adding value to the links between us so that our friendship can continue to blossom in the 21st century. As you mentioned, Emin, Minister Çavuşoğlu recently hosted an event a few months ago, pre-COVID, in which he highlighted the importance of the Asia-Pacific region to Turkey. He wants Turkey to grow that relationship. And as an Asia-Pacific country, we want to grow that relationship as well. We'll all benefit from the market diversification that offers. So let's make it happen. And on today's settings, I think we should pass on to our expert panel who are well placed to comment. Many thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Hinton, for the well-said words. This is very insightful. Now, I would like to turn to Charles and Catherine. Catherine, what type of measurements did the companies in New Zealand take during the pandemic as global trade took a hit? COVID-19 crisis has also showed us global supply chain vulnerabilities and signaled a new way of economic globalization. How will New Zealand adapt itself to this transforming environment, and in which sectors do you foresee opportunities?
Thank you very much. It's fantastic to be here with you all, and I just say I have very fond memories of Turkey. As a young person, I backpacked around the world, and Turkey was one of the countries that I enjoyed, and the people are so warm and the food is so good, and I would love to be back there with you now and your lovely warm temperatures. But in terms of the question of what types of measures did New Zealand companies take during the COVID crisis? Here, well, we had a very strict lockdown. So we had one of the strictest lockdowns, I think, in the world. So we had what we called a level 4 lockdown, which meant that no business essentially was able to operate apart from so-called essential services. So I guess one positive for the New Zealand economy was that food and food production was classified as an essential service. So if you were a food manufacturer, you were able to continue operating, but if you were a non-food manufacturer, you were forced to close down. So for the food manufacturers and the food exports, they actually went remarkably well. There were supply chain disruptions, which I guess was inevitable, and that started with China, with obviously challenges when their workforce was also under lockdown, and so the goods weren't flowing very well. But every country in the world, I think, prioritizes food imports, So they were the first to sort of get the green lane and get moving again. And so a lot of our, particularly our healthy food exports, such as dairy, meat, kiwi fruit, anything with healthful products has actually done very well through this period. The same can't be said for our manufacturers who were completely unable to work and quite frustrated really because they were unable to export, even if they were making something that was considered to be an essential service. I guess the positive was that the government here said, we're going to go lockdown really hard, but we want to really stamp this out so we can reopen the economy quickly as well. And so we have been pretty much open and business as usual for probably about 3 weeks now. The main problems we're still experiencing with supply chain, which is probably common to most countries, is air freight. So air cargo is very expensive. Until we get passengers back on aeroplanes to subsidise the air freight, I'm afraid that's going to stay expensive. So definitely companies have to plan ahead. All the just-in-time manufacturing has pretty much gone out the window. And customers have to be told you've got to plan ahead because everything to be affordable is going to have to go by sea. So probably I'll just leave it there.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. Great to hear how companies in the NZ took COVID-19 serious and learn more about their practices. There will be opportunities for everyone. Now, Charles, I know your expertise is global trade and you must be very busy nowadays. US and China trade is important for NZ. As far as I know, China is the #1 customer for NZ's dairy products, and US is the #1 buyer of NZ's meat products. In Asia Pacific, how do you see the international trade, given the developments in the US-China trade relations, growing of ASEAN importance and multinational companies' increased focus in the region?
Well, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel, and I wish the people of Turkey well as you are confronting the COVID-19 disease, as we have been. It's been a very interesting period. China was the initial source of this disease, the first economy to be hit by this disease, and it's our major export market. So we were very, very concerned in late January, February, watching developments in China, but China has managed the disease very well, and the economy has resumed, and our trade with China has continued. Perversely, actually, China's probably becoming more important for us than it was before, because its economy is now moving apace, and many of our other markets are still fighting COVID-19. But one thing I think this challenge has shown to us is the wisdom of us having a well-developed free trade agreement network, and the agreements have been very successful in ensuring that trade has continued. And we not only have seen the China market holding up, we've seen some good growth in markets like Taiwan and Japan, and some of the ASEAN countries. So I think we can be very well pleased with where we're sitting in terms of our network. We watch the US-China trade disputes and other disputes with extreme interest in New Zealand. They're both very important markets for us, and good friends for us. To date, we haven't seen too much flow on in terms of our trade, but there is the potential for that to occur. Also, there are some disagreements with some of the other countries that we are friendly with, and China, Canada and Australia are facing problems right now, and we watch those developments with acute interest. So basically, China is by far our biggest market. We want to continue to trade a lot with China, but we don't want to be absolutely dependent on China as a market. So we are keen to expand our trade relationships. This is why the current negotiations with the European Union and the UK are very important for us. And we also want to develop some of our existing arrangements. For example, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership originally was negotiated by 11 economies in the Asia Pacific, but we recently have had the United Kingdom strongly interested in joining that agreement, and there has been interest from some other non-APEC countries such as Colombia. Maybe in terms of Turkey's Asia Anew strategy, that's something Turkey could think about in due course. We obviously will be even more interested in the Turkish market for our manufactured exports should we be able to conclude our free trade agreement with the EU, because Turkey is part of a customs union with the EU, will get better access automatically into the Turkish market. So we're watching that with great interest. But can I just echo the comments from the ambassador that I think the New Zealand business community would be very keen on a even closer relationship with Turkey, and we'd like to explore how that might be achieved.
Okay, thank you, Charles. NZ has a unique position in the region given its relations with the USA and China. It seems international trade will be back on the top of the agenda as we are going into the new normal. Now, dear Wendy, this is for you. New Zealand and Turkey enjoy a great level of friendship and have put many efforts to transform it into a better trade and investment environment. DEİK established the Turkey-New Zealand Business Council in 2012, which has been promoting the efforts. For example, we had gathered many dairy producers from Turkey and New Zealand at my residence last year. We look forward to having more face-to-face meetings when the virus is completely gone. Dear Ambassador Hinton, in which areas do you see potential growth prospects for two countries?
I think that from the visits that we have managed to have during my time pre-COVID, that the sectors of huge interest are the sort of specialist agricultural and other technology areas. And you saw from the visit of our then special trade envoy, Mike Peterson, last year, that there was a lot of focus on interest in technology in the dairy sector and the food processing sector and so on. And we have spoken to Turkish agencies such as TGEM, and it is clear that there is interest in that area, and that Turkey many Turks see a need for reform in the agricultural sector, and New Zealand's expertise would blend well into that process. Yourself, Emin, you're very much interested in sustainable energy, and Turkey itself has a small geothermal, you know more than me, but there's a small geothermal market here. But beyond that, I think Turkey does have a strong interest in New Zealand's expertise in renewables, in renewable energy. Other areas of interest, I guess, well, I think those would be the two main areas. Would be technological expertise, not just in agriculture, but also we see people like New Zealand companies selling quite high-end aviation equipment and things like that, motors for specialised craft to the Turkish market. These are small niche markets, but they can be developed. Catherine may be able to offer some other insights into New Zealand business interests.
Yes, thanks, Wendy. Look, I hear that building and construction are big skill sets in Turkey as well. And I would just sort of alert people on the call to the fact that New Zealand has got a really huge infrastructure catch-up going on here. And the government sort of sees it as a way to stimulate the economy to, I think all governments are borrowing large amounts. But I just did a little bit of research before I got on the call, and there's a $12 billion upgrade program going on in New Zealand infrastructure. Areas like water, transport, clean energy and buildings will all be a focus of the spending. New roads, I think I said water, wastewater. So we've got a lot of our regional councils that have really left investment in the so-called three waters as we're hugely behind. And we've also got a big housing problem. We've got a big housing shortage. So I heard at a seminar today, we have 20,000 people waiting for public housing. And currently we build about 2,500 new houses a year. So probably like a lot of governments, there is going to be big investment in all of those infrastructure areas, and certainly a lot of procurement going on. So there will be opportunities to watch out for. The other thing that I'd just like to alert people to, in case I forget to mention it later, is field days. We have the annual field days in Hamilton, which is a really big trade fair for everything to do with agriculture, but particularly AgriTech. And you can all go digitally this year. So you don't even have to come to New Zealand. It's between the 13th and the 26th of July, and they're having some sort of digital version of field days. So if you, I'm sure the ambassador will share the Google address, but if you Google Field Days New Zealand, you'll come up with the information you need.
Thank you, Wendy and Catherine. Catherine, again, you. I think New Zealand is a great example on how a country can combine agriculture, farming, and industry in a great mix for the economy and export markets. As Turkey, the milk cooperatives can be a great example for us. I personally admire the concept of Fonterra, which has more than $12 billion annual revenues. With this webinar, I would like to call to Fonterra and invite them to Turkey for investment. They can acquire a local player or form a joint venture. Catherine, could you please tell us how New Zealand became a global dairy player? In this regard, what could you recommend for Turkish dairy farmers, given the best practices from New Zealand?
Thank you. That is a really great question. And I think New Zealand has two examples of good cooperation amongst farmers and growers. And one of them is Fonterra in the dairy section, and the other is a company called Zespri, and that's a kiwi fruit cooperative. So the great thing about cooperatives, of course, is they look after the growers, and a lot of the profits, go back to the farmers and the farm gate. And I guess the genesis of those cooperatives, certainly the dairy one, really it was driven by need in the early days. When you're producing a fresh product that has to be processed, the farmers had to collectivise really to build the processing factories from years and years ago. And so that was really the start of it. It's not a product that you can store. It has to be processed if you're producing it for export. So, I mean, they quickly exceeded the amount for the local market, so they had to build those factories, and the farmers collectivised to do that. So they have a proud history, and I guess as the years went by, the government certainly helped by supportive legislation, but really just over the years, the dairy factories consolidated and got bigger until it became one big entity. And certainly when you're trying to take your product to the world, New Zealand has a lot of small to medium-sized enterprises here. We don't have a lot of big companies. And certainly when you're trying to compete on the global scene, it helps to collectivise because, you know, you're going to be more competitive against some very big global competitors. So it is doable. I think if all of the people in a cooperative see the benefits of it, and the government can have supporting legislation, then it's a very good model for those big food exports.
Okay, thank you for the elaboration, Catherine. Cooperatives like Fonterra really play an important role in NZ. I was amazed to learn that NZ was the third country in the world to establish a cooperative in 1871. It was even more amazing that there were 100 dairy cooperatives in New Zealand in 1900. Success does not come easy for sure. Dear Wendy, in New Zealand, the government has a target of reducing net carbon emissions to zero by 2050. The renewable energy is playing a more important role, even if there are challenges. New Zealand and Turkey both enjoy renewable energy development in wind, hydro, and geothermal. As of year-end 2019, Turkey has an installed capacity of 1,526 megawatt, and New Zealand has an installed capacity of 1,005 megawatt. Currently, there are only 5 countries in the world with installed capacity of more than 1,000 megawatt in the world. Turkey has also started to increase the utilization of renewable energy in the last decade. One of the main reasons was to decrease the dependency on hydrocarbon resources, which is one of the biggest imports in Turkey. New Zealand is one of the foremost countries in the geothermal industry. One homework for us should be to combine the Turkish and New Zealand geothermal companies for more technical know-how, sharing and understanding of best practices in each country. In this regard, Mrs. Ambassador, can we ensure a government-to-government agreement in geothermal for cooperation between Turkey and NZ, just like Indonesia and New Zealand signed a couple of years ago?
Well, I don't see why we couldn't look into it, Eamon. I mean, as you know, recently we tried to hold joint economic cooperation talks between us, and we never quite got there before COVID. So perhaps now we should follow the example of everybody else and do it digitally. And perhaps that's one topic for the agenda. What do you think? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, Wendy, can you repeat again?
So I was saying that I don't see why we couldn't open that topic up for discussion. If there's a good basis to have an agreement of some sort, then let's look into it. But what I was saying was that we were about to hold joint economic commission discussions pre-COVID. We never quite got there. But we should perhaps now look to do that digitally, and that would be one topic that we could put on the agenda, and we can have our colleagues from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment there, and other people who have a strong knowledge of the sector.
Yes, Wendy. Yes, I look forward to it, and also thanks. And geothermal is a big business in Turkey, as we are now number 4 in the world. Turkish companies are investing in Croatia, East Africa, and Indonesia, just like me. Thanks again, Ms. Hinton, for your support to the Turkish NZ Corporation. Catherine, now the COVID-19 outbreak revealed the weakness in our food system that is disconnected and faces threats from climate change. Recently, we have seen many examples of using artificial intelligence in farming, and NZ is one of the leading countries in the world. On this matter, how can we ensure a sustainable way of transferring know-how between 2 countries?
Thank you for a question. That's a great question. And yes, we do have a lot of AgriTech going on, and we're seeing some really amazing applications. So and I think, you know, a good place to share that is a place like the field days where they have all of that technology on display. So it would be great if business people from Turkey who are interested in that, maybe if you join the digital version of that meeting this year, it gives people a taste, and it's a low-cost way to dip your toe in the water. And if people like what they see, then they could maybe plan to have a proper physical trip the following year. But you'll see all sorts of things there. We have a company called Robotics Plus that's working on automated picking of fruit, so automated sorting of apples and picking of kiwi fruit and spraying. So what we're finding in New Zealand is that any of those agricultural sectors where it's getting hard to get labour, we have difficulty getting people, and probably I think it's a problem with the horticulture sector all around the world, a shortage of labour who want to pick the crops. Then we're increasingly looking to develop robotic solutions to that. They've all got auto sensors on them. We're using drone technology. We have highly automated, we have companies working sort of in the meat processing area with highly automated meat killing chains. So, and, you know, obviously genetics, we have companies that are doing a lot with genetics. So there's plenty of opportunities. I think we would love to share the technology with Turkey. You know, sometimes people and countries get a little bit nervous about doing free trade deals with New Zealand because they're worried about their agricultural sector and they're protecting their farmers. But increasingly, because we have had such success with Asia with free trade agreements, we've sort of really gone from a country that used to feed the West to a country that's now increasingly feeding the East. And in terms of food security, we're great believers that actually if COVID has shown us anything, it's that global supply chains are remarkably resilient when it comes to food. And we certainly have found that the food has flowed very, very well to all our export markets, and we haven't really had too much disruption. So that's probably a long answer, but
okay, it's okay. Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. This is inspiring for both countries. Now, Charles, Turkey is in the process of renewing its customs union agreement with the European Union, and as far as I know, EU and NZ are preparing to sign a free trade agreement very soon. Turkey, as a country economically integrated to the EU, is also aiming to become an alternative global production hub after the pandemic. Do you think that these processes that go hand in hand can further strengthen Turkey-NZ trade and investment ties?
Yes, and good luck in your negotiations with the EU. I think your view on us being prepared to sign a free trade agreement with the EU sometime very soon is a little bit optimistic. We still have a lot of work to do in our negotiation, with agriculture being the main sticking point. But we are looking forward to that agreement coming to fruition soon. And as I said in my first comments, this will mean that there will immediately be a stronger focus on the Turkish market from our manufacturing exports because of your association agreement with the EU and your common external tariff for everything apart from agriculture. But I do think that there is enormous potential for us to look at cooperation, not just in those goods product areas, but in the services space as well. This is an area which is still a problem for us after COVID-19. Our goods trade exports have held up extremely well. But in terms of tourism, in terms of international education, our two biggest services exports, and actually a lot of our professional services there has been a very big impact on our trade. So I think we will be looking to grow linkages in that space and be innovative. You know, one thing that is hampering us, I guess, bilaterally is we don't have direct flights between New Zealand and Turkey. Maybe post-COVID that could be something we look at. And I think that in terms of you know, professional services, we could be doing a lot more together than we are right now. But I think that the fact that you are negotiating with the EU and we are, the fact that you are negotiating with the UK and we are, does offer a dynamic to see that our bilateral relations will expand. And as I noted before, there are developments going on in our region that Turkey might like to plug into, which are potentially extremely exciting and which could not only increase your integration with the Asia Pacific, but also see closer relations between New Zealand and Turkey.
Okay, thank you, Charles. We look forward to upgrading our trade agreements and signing new ones with NZ, which is viewed as a very friendly nation here in Turkey. And also, in the same topic, Charles, when New Zealand signed FTA with China, what was the most challenging topics and how long it took to sign the FTA?
The negotiation with China was a tough one, but it was concluded within 3 years, which actually is pretty good in terms of negotiating free trade agreements. From my experience, 1 year is extremely fast, 2 years is the norm, and they can stretch for many years. Obviously, there were issues around agriculture, which were problematic for China, and in the case of New Zealand, you know, we're a economy of now 5 million people, opening our manufacturing sector to the biggest population in the world and one of the most efficient manufacturers in the world. So there were some issues to address, but the negotiation actually was quite straightforward. It's a very high quality free trade agreement we have with China, and it is working well for both parties. There's been enormous growth both ways in trade since the agreement has been signed. Indeed, when we were negotiating, we did modeling looking at what the impacts might be, but the actual impacts are far beyond what we were expecting. So in terms of your negotiations with China, again, good luck. They're tough negotiators, but the economic benefits to us have been enormous.
Thank you. And again, one more question to you, Charles. Turkish construction companies are interested to undertake contracts in the region. What would you recommend for Turkish companies for construction and infrastructure in this region?
Well, there are enormous opportunities in our region, and as Catherine noted in her comments, New Zealand is investing very large sums in infrastructure right now. I hope Turkish companies are looking at these projects and are interested in bidding for some of this work. But basically, we're talking about very major investments in urban projects, in infrastructure projects, water, roads, railway projects. We've got port redevelopments occurring as well. So I think that there's great opportunity for Turkish companies to be involved if they are interested. New Zealand has got very open government procurement processes. We essentially buy from the most efficient bidder. And we're not known to be protectionist in this field at all. So I hope Turkey does have a look at what's happening. There is enormous opportunity, and I think that our companies would be increasingly interested in working with Turkey in other markets, particularly our professional services firms, our architects and engineers. They're very active in the region already, and if there are opportunities to pair with Turkish companies, I'm sure they'd like to sit down and talk.
I have to unmute. Thank you very much. Dear participants, our panel has now come to an end, and we have a lot of interest. We have received some questions. Now I would like to look at these questions and forward to you if we have some. One first question. Hold on a second. Now, Baran Balaban asks, we can have a non-stop. Baran Balaban asks whether we can have a non-stop flight between Auckland and Istanbul in the foreseeable future. Yeah, hopefully, Turkish Airlines starts non-stop flight to Australia, then it can be extended to NZ, I think so. Another question about from Onur Soybaş, Akgün Software. It's about with the COVID-19 pandemic, it will be surely necessary to develop the current healthcare IT systems in New Zealand. So far I would like to ask if there will be a new solutions requirements for health information systems. How can we proceed? We would like to contact with the respected government and local IT partners that need healthcare informatics solutions to present our new technology informatics systems. Waiting for your kind information, please. Charles, can you reply to this question?
I was going to suggest that Catherine was the expert, but we do actually have at least one New Zealand company that's very active in that field in Turkey, actually. The government has recently announced potential changes to our public health system, which will include information systems. So there may be opportunity for Turkish companies to operate here in New Zealand, but maybe Catherine has got some more specific ideas.
Okay, please, Catherine.
Thank you. Yes, look, I'm sure like every country will be looking at our health IT systems. Our district health boards, and there's a number of them, have there is a central purchasing agency. So they would be doing all the tenders for this kind of work. So maybe tomorrow I could send a link to that to Ambassador Hinton, and she could pass that back to Emin, if that's okay.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Today we had a very interactive and informative panel. I would like to thank our guests for the webinar and for your participants. Your input was very helpful for everyone who wanted to have a better understanding of the NZ economy and how we can cooperate as Turkey. In the future, we'll look forward to having similar and more detailed sessions like this. Thank you for your time. Hairera.
Thank you very much.
Hairera.
Have a good day.
Thank you.